Welcome to History with Humour, the channel where we dig into the past with a shovel of sarcasm and a sprinkle of inappropriate laughter. Today, we're talking about Adolf Hitler, the dictator who failed at painting but managed to ruin the world. If that's not the weirdest career pivot in history, I don't know what is. Stick around for weird facts, awkward truths, and maybe a dirty joke or two. Let's dive in, shall we? Let's start with a fun fact. Adolf Hitler wanted to be an artist. Yep. The guy who yelled his way into infamy originally wanted to paint flowers and landscapes. You know, the kind of tranquil scenes Bob Ross would paint while wearing a comfy sweater and whispering about happy little trees. Hitler in a comfy sweater and whispering? Not so much. He even applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts twice and got rejected both times. Apparently his drawings were so bad, the admissions team was basically like, look, your artistic talent is about as appealing as a plate of lukewarm sauerkraut. Stick to doodling in the margins of your hate manifesto, buddy. I mean, can you imagine if he'd been accepted? We could be sitting here talking about Hitler the avant-garde weirdo instead of Hitler, the genocidal maniac. Imagine walking through a gallery sipping Chardonnay and discussing the deep symbolism of his angsty self-portraits. Darling, the use of ochre in his moustache is simply divine. And his art exhibit, probably titled something profound like Mind Struggle with Straight Lines. Instead of invading Poland, he could have been invading the Met Gala in a ridiculously oversized beret. The possibilities are both terrifying and hilarious, but alas, the art world dodged a swastika-shaped bullet, and the rest, as they say, is history. And by history, I mean a horrific chapter of human existence that we are still unpacking and trying to understand. It's like finding out your charming but slightly intense neighbor was secretly building a death ray in his basement. So, the next time you get a rejection letter, just remember it could be a good thing. You might be terrible at whatever you applied for, and that's okay. Because hey, at least you're not responsible for starting World War II. Fun fact number 2, Hitler was a vegetarian. Yep, while his policies were tearing the world apart, he was nibbling on lentils and judging people who ate schnitzel. You can almost picture him at a Nazi rally after a rousing speech about racial purity, being like, all right everyone, who's up for a tofu scramble and a kale smoothie? He once famously said meat eating was barbaric. The irony, coming from the guy who orchestrated the Holocaust. It's like finding out your yoga instructor also moonlights as an international arms dealer. The cognitive dissonance is real, people. You've got to wonder, was he at dinner parties like, please Hans, no more bratwurst, can't you see the poor piggies are suffering? Also, pass the sauerkraut and hand me Poland. Now, I'm not saying all vegetarians are secretly evil geniuses plotting world domination, but in Hitler's case, it's hard to ignore the, shall we say, hypocrisy. It's like finding out your dentist has a secret cavity fetish. It just throws everything you thought you knew into question. Some historians believe his vegetarianism stemmed from his love of animals, which, okay, fair enough. But then you remember he also loved Germany, and look how that turned out. It's like having a friend who claims to be a cat person, but then constantly trips over their feline companion and forgets to feed it. You start to question their definition of love. So the next time you're tempted to judge someone for ordering a steak, just remember, at least they're not responsible for the systematic extermination of millions. Unless they're also dipping that steak in cyanide, in which case maybe back away slowly and call the authorities. Now let's talk about Hitler's obsession with the occult. This man was like a kid in a conspiracy theory candy shop, except instead of debating the moon landing, he was trying to summon ancient demons and find magical artifacts. He believed in all sorts of crazy stuff. Magical relics like the Holy Grail, the Spear of Destiny, which supposedly made its owner invincible. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. And probably those weird crystal skulls from the Indiana Jones movie. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a secret stash of tarot cards and a Ouija board under his bed. His sidekick, Heinrich Himmler, was even more into it. This guy was basically a real-life version of that weird history teacher who's convinced aliens built the pyramids. He even launched expeditions and treasure hunts to find these mystical relics. Imagine being a Nazi soldier thinking, finally, some action, time to conquer Europe, only to be handed a map to Atlantis and a divining rod. It's like Indiana Jones, but everyone's wearing a swastika armband, and the villains are just as delusional as the heroes. We're talking about a group of people who were obsessed with creating a master race, but couldn't even find their way out of a paper bag without consulting a rune stone. And you know what the funniest part is? For all their talk about Aryan superiority and ancient wisdom, the Nazis were basically just a bunch of LARPers with really bad fashion sense and even worse ideas. They were like the Dungeons and Dragons group that takes things way too seriously and accidentally summons a demon lord. So we've established that Hitler was a vegetarian, failed artist and occult enthusiast. But wait, there's more. This guy was a walking, talking contradiction, full of quirks and habits that would make even the most eccentric hipster blush. For starters, he hated smoking and drinking. He'd rant and rave about the evils of tobacco and alcohol, which, okay, fair enough. Those things will kill you. But then you remember he was basically mainlining amphetamines like they were going out of style. Gotta love the double standards. It's like being lectured on the dangers of sugar by a guy who brushes his teeth with Mountain Dew. And don't even get me started on his cleanliness obsession. This man was a germaphobe extraordinaire. He'd wash his hands constantly, insisted on spotless surroundings, and probably had nightmares about dust bunnies staging a coup d'etat. Which is kind of hilarious when you think about it. Because, historically speaking, his ideas stank worse than a 3-day-old bratwurst. It's like trying to clean a sewage pipe with a toothbrush. No matter how hard you scrub, it's still going to be disgusting. But hey, at least he was hygienic, right? I mean, that's got to count for something, right? Well, okay, folks, buckle up, because we're about to enter the twilight zone of historical weirdness. Are you ready for this? Hitler loved Disney. Yes, you heard that right. The guy who gave us 1-2, the Holocaust, and a whole lot of trauma also had a soft spot for singing dwarfs and talking mice. Apparently he was a big fan of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You know, the movie about a wicked ruler who's defeated by a team effort in True Love's Kiss. The irony is just, it's like finding out Genghis Khan's favourite movie was Gandhi. Maybe he saw himself in the Evil Queen. Or maybe he just really liked the yodeling. We may never know the answer, and frankly, I'm not sure I want to. Some things are better left unexplored, like the inside of a gas station bathroom or the depths of Hitler's Disney obsession. And speaking of things that are better left unexplored, let's talk about Hitler's paranoia. This guy was convinced everyone was out to get him, which, to be fair, wasn't entirely unreasonable given his line of work. But we're not talking about a healthy dose of caution here. We're talking full-blown, tinfoil hat, checking under the bed for assassins paranoia. He constantly changed his schedule, had food tasters, and probably slept with a cyanide pill under his pillow. He was like a Bond villain who took self-preservation to a whole new level of absurdity. The irony is, of course, that the only thing that ultimately killed him was himself. Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like setting a bear trap in your bedroom to catch a burglar and then tripping over it in the middle of the night. And that's the bizarre history of Adolf Hitler. A failed artist, a paranoid dictator, a Disney fan with a veggie platter, and an all-around terrible human being. If this doesn't make you question reality, I don't know what will. Thanks for watching History with Humour. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment below with your favourite weird fact. Remember, history is best served with a side of sarcasm. Until next time, keep laughing and keep learning.